old ship sailed to the distance, then we saw her come about. The captain watched through a spyglass when we heard him catch his breath, and we saw the storm a brewing had become a wall of death. Turn the ship around, me boys, turn around and run. That storm, it wants a battle, and it's sure that we're outgunned. What of the ship that's out there, do we leave her to the gale? She's called the Flying Dutchman, and it's rage that fills her sails. The thunder growled like demons, and the lightning stabbed the waves, and the Dutchman, she leapt towards us, riding fury from the grave. Our captain, he stayed at the wheel, the crew, they manned the lines, and still that ship and storm were quickly closing in behind. Our ship would crest a giant wave and crash to the trough below, and the crew held on to what they could, they were damned if they let go. The rain and sea and storm winds crashed against our ship with wrath, and from the deck of that cursed ship we could hear them laugh.
It's time for the Ward Scott Files, hosted by John Martin. Join the Salty Dog and his captain, Ted Yoho. Search for the Ward Scott Files on Facebook, Vimeo, and over 30 audio platforms, including Apple and Spotify. Now here's your host, the Salty Dog, John Martin.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Political Pirate podcast. Yours truly, John Martin, the old salty dog, and my captain of our pirate ship, my great friend, Ted Yoho. Good morning, Ted.
Good morning, John. How you doing, buddy?
I am truly blessed. I'll tell you what, man, truly blessed. God bless America and God bless Donald Trump. I mean, wow. We got to start the show off with just a wow. What a week.
You really do. I mean, so much is going on. It's so dynamic. Definitely a fluid moment. Every day he's in there.
Yeah. Well, tell us where you are, Ted. It looks, it doesn't look like right around the corner to me.
It's not Wallachia. We are in Slovakia, which is used to be Czechoslovakia until it was 32 years ago. They broke away from the Czech Republic. And just an absolutely beautiful area. And we are going into the House of Beers.
The House of Beer. Okay. I just want to make sure you're not being held hostage because the president's on his way back. We could maybe call him to divert over there and get you released.
That's right. Anyways.
Are you going to be able to talk about it? All right. Are you ready?
Yeah, I can talk. I mean, we'll go ahead. I just ordered a beer and I'm outside and we'll toast you guys. So go ahead and start the show. Look forward to it.
So what a week it was for President Trump, man. I mean, unbelievable. And the Democrats, of course, are going crazy. They don't know exactly what to do. But to say that they pulled out all stops in the Middle East for the president is an understatement. I'm just going to play one small clip of his greeting in Saudi Arabia, but everywhere he went, man, they treated him not only like the president of the United States, but a rock star, I suppose. But let's play this clip of him coming into to Saudi Arabia. So they pulled out the purple carpet for President Trump there. And of course, the red carpet everywhere. The purple is for royalty. But man, he was greeted beyond, I think, just President of the United States. It's unbelievable. I don't know if Ted is still with us. He's traveling and he's overseas, so he may come in and out a bit. But anyway, it's a far cry. I'll endeavor to persevere. It's a far cry from how President Biden, the last time he made a trip to Saudi Arabia. Can we play the clip from that? We may be having a little bit of technical difficulties, so sorry about that. That's the joys of the podcast. We're definitely original here in the sense that okay, we're going to play this video. I just played you a video of President Trump being greeted in Saudi Arabia. Let's play a quick snippet from when former President Biden made a trip over there. I don't see anything on my screen.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC
It's
News
over
YouTube
now.
channel.
You can go
If you'd
past.
like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch
You can
live
stop
event
it.
coverage,
Stop.
click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget
So
to
you saw
download
the
ABC
famous
News app for
fist
breaking
bump
news
there.
alerts.
That's about
Thanks for
the
watching.
best Biden, I guess, could do, man. But where do we start? I mean, it's
When I started
unbelievable
drinking
what
warm water
has
to
happened.
help me lose weight,
I'm just
my
going to go
friends
down
laughed at
a
me.
list. There's
But when
Ted.
they
He's
saw
back.
how fast it was
So
working,
Ted, we
they
just
started doing
played.
it themselves.
Can you hear me, Ted?
Apparently, thousands of women are
You're
already
fine.
doing this
Okay.
every night as they
Sorry
sleep
for the
by
technical
adding one unusual
difficulties there, but
ingredient
as
to a
I
glass
say,
of
ladies
warm
and
water
gentlemen,
before bed.
that just
Not
shows
long
you how
ago,
real we are.
my weight gain
But
I was
almost
in a
cost me my
pub and it was built by the Romans, and they have good blocking technology.
I understand. So, in case you missed it, Ted, we played a little snippet of Donald Trump being greeted, and as I
I
said,
saw that. I saw both of them.
yeah, and then the
Big
fist
difference.
bump, of course, with Joe Biden. A slight difference in how they perceive the presidency, wouldn't you say?
It really is. And, persona has so much to do, especially when you're in foreign affairs. In the political realm, foreign policy, it's so much as the perception that you're portraying. And when you're the leader of the free world, the strongest country in the world, you can't be bumbling Joe, stumbling around. And this is where Donald Trump really shines. He does not like to be in second place, and he exudes that. And people, foreign leaders, they respect it. They may not like it, but they respect it.
Absolutely. I'll tell you who doesn't like it. That's the progressive leftists here back at home, man. They just are they don't know what to say about it, because of all the different things that they've criticized the president about, it's really hard to actually criticize what he's doing in the Middle East, because it makes them look even more foolish than they have been so far.
It really does, but it goes back to Trump's speech to the Congress, the State of the Union, basically, where he says, "No matter what I do, you'll never stand, you'll never applaud." And it's not for him; they should be applauding for America. This is a reset in American politics. You look at the trade deals he's done, and I know you're going to get into that with the Saudis and the UAE. I think that's just a different style of leadership. And it is going to be the golden age of America. I mean, there's going to be some tweaks in there that people don't like. I've been married for 50 years, and there's things I do that I know drives Carolyn crazy. But you know what? We stay together because we know where we're heading. And that's the thing that people need to understand. This is a man that's in the office, the president, who is leading this nation to a next generation and getting rid of the old. So look forward to it.
Yeah, and I love what you said. He's leading this nation. That is exactly what, love him, hate him, whatever. Donald Trump is leading this nation, which is what the president is supposed to do. And we have not had leadership since the last time he was in there. And we've talked about this before, Donald Trump is now a better leader than he was in his first term. And also, I mean, he is just so set up to be successful, and he is not letting any grass grow under his feet, buddy. He is marching forward, and that's what the American people want. I firmly believe that.
No, I agree. They're not used to it, that's for sure. But it's definitely going to be a change, and this is a good change. It is resetting. It's rebuilding the strength that you need to have peace through strength, and this is what it looks like in that transition.
Yeah, well, I got a little list here, and in no particular order, but I mean, where do you start? Where do you start? Trillions in deals. I mean, first of all, let's start with that. He has put forward with negotiations with those various countries that he visited. If all of it comes to fruition, it's over $2 trillion.
That's the start of it. If you look at just the Taiwan semiconductor manufacturers, TSCM, they're putting in $800 billion, and they've already done over $1 trillion. And you look at the Saudi deal, you look at the United Emirates deal. These are just the beginnings, and you're not looking at Apple, you're not looking at Microsoft, you're not looking at all these other countries that we've been preaching move out of China. China's goal is to be the number one power in the world. Their goal is to be the center of the universe, and everybody else submits to them. And so this is how we get away from that. This is how we kind of play the long game, is by divesting from them.
Yeah, well, you keep hearing, I hear the pundits when they're trying to be critical, but they're kind of, trying to figure out exactly how to spin this. But they say, oh, well, the details, there's no details or whatever. And that is fair up to a point, but at least there is a framework where details will follow. And will every single thing come to fruition? Probably not, but there may be things that are even bigger than we're seeing so far. I mean, for instance, we know now that there's a multi-billion-dollar deal, one of the largest ever for Boeing, is looks to me like it's definitely going to happen. And the thing,
you brought up something.
Let me just finish this one thought.
Sure.
I'll get right back to it. The thing about it is there were no details to worry about under previous administration of Biden because there was nothing to have details about. I mean, but go ahead, Ted.
Well, leadership comes from making decisions. Are they always going to be the proper decision? No, there are going to be some hiccups in there. There's going to be some things like, oh, shouldn't have done that. But leadership goes back to correcting those mistakes and moving towards the goal. That goal is to build that golden age of America, new jobs coming into this country, manufacturing jobs. And I know some people say, well, these kids today aren't going to go into manufacturing. I disagree with that. I think some of them will. Not everybody will want to go to college, and I think you're going to see an influx of that. So I think that's a good thing.
Well, I tell you, and I didn't have it in my notes, but while you were talking, I just sparked in me that, I was thinking about that.
I thought I saw a spark there, a flash.
Yeah, spark. That image of that, I guess it's the world's tallest building. I think it's in,
right.
Is it Dubai, I believe? But
in Dubai, but Saudi Arabia is going to build one. They're building a city. It's 100, I think it's 100, close to 150 miles long, but it's real narrow. And it's just amazing. Yeah, the world is changing. It really is changing.
But they put that building, and I'm sorry I didn't pull up the image of it. But they put that building basically looked like the American flag. I don't know if you saw that or not. It was incredible.
No, I haven't seen that.
You need to check it out. They lit up that building. The entire building was the American flag in bright lights, and it was incredible. And what made me think about that is that the message, it's one thing we're seeing here in America and the free world, but this is also being seen throughout the Middle East. And it's hard to chant death to America when the leading Islamic countries over there are becoming pro-America now. So that is no small thing in and of itself for their own people to see this.
What you said right there, I think is so impactful because it's like turning the page on history. Like, we want to get rid of this. Let's get away from those conflicts, the terrorists, ISIS, all that stuff. Let's move forward to new relations of where we can be. And I think that ties right into the golden age of America.
Yeah, well, one of the things, and it's not getting a whole lot of publicity, but we're talking about the deals and everything else. But now we have, for the first time, really in my lifetime, but certainly in the last 50 years, a potential for a peace deal with Syria. This is no small thing. I mean, and I think the president is right to be cautious about it, but to basically set up a framework where if they comply with certain things, we can normalize relationships with them. And people say, oh, well, this one guy was a terrorist. I'm not downplaying anything from the past, but you don't make peace with your friends. You make peace with your enemies. And the thought that we wouldn't eventually potentially make peace with any nation just belies, what happened in like World War II and stuff. We made peace with Germany, with obviously Japan, with Italy, the Axis powers and everything, when they committed atrocious acts against us and killed, hundreds of thousands of our citizens and stuff and our fellow friends around the world. So you have to make peace with your enemies. You don't make peace with your friends.
No, and it's like I said, it's a new day in that foreign policy. And, you were talking about Germany, Japan, South Korea, Vietnam. Those countries are in our top 10 trading countries. And, they got that way because like after World War II with Japan and Germany, the foreign aid that we put in through the Marshall Plan, South Korea, the same thing, Vietnam, the same thing. And they moved from being anti-American. Obviously, now they're in our realm of alliances, and strong trading partners. And this is where we really need to get. And this is a game changer in the Middle East. This has never happened before in my lifetime. And, I think of John Kerry when I was in the Congress on the Foreign Affairs Committee. He was talking about going into Syria, taking out their no-fly zones. And this is what they did to Gaddafi in Libya. They went in, he and Hillary Clinton and Obama went in and took out their no-fly zones. That took away that country's defense, led to the fall of Gaddafi, so there was no leader. And that's where you got the uprise of ISIS. And so John Kerry, Obama, Hillary Clinton all wanted to do that in Syria. We stopped that. We stopped that in Congress, said there will be no way we're going to authorize that. And there was Republicans and Democrats because we have the War Powers Act, and we said, you're not going to do that. And so they backed off of that. But had they done that, what else would have come out of Syria? I don't think we would be sitting at the negotiating tables right now and seeing what you're seeing. I don't think you would see the Saudis and the UAE coming in and, talking about the future instead of hanging up on what's happened in the past and continuing that model that just hadn't worked in all of our lifetimes. I mean, from the oil embargo of 1974 with Iran.
Yeah, well, while you were talking, I keep thinking of something you said at one of our first shows together, where you coined this phrase of trade, not aid kind of situation, and that's I find that fascinating because when you tend to make a lot of arguments can go by the wayside when you're making money together. You don't really tend to want to rock the boat too much when that happens. So I think the president is definitely onto something there.
That phrase has caught on a lot, and I'm very proud of that. It was when we put in that bill, the BUILD Act that created the Development Finance Corporation, and the whole impetus was to move countries from aid to trade. We had been giving out perpetual aid with no changes. Our goal is to change that dynamics and move these countries and put aid in there to jumpstart their economy, but then wean them off of that. And that's what we saw with Japan, Germany, South Korea, Vietnam, and pretty much any other country.
Yeah, and talking about peace and all, a couple of things that the president has accomplished on this trip is that he's isolated Iran, for instance, more than ever because he's making buddies with everybody around them. And I don't know if you saw this or not, but it broke kind of late last night, which would be early in the morning for you, kid, that the president announced on Air Force One on his return back to the United States that there is a potential agreement, or at least a proposal that the United States has formally submitted to Iran. So the ball is in their corner, but he specifically said that they don't have a whole lot of time to this. So he has boxed Iran in even more so, I think.
He really has. And, again, if you go back to Obama and Joe Biden, the Iranian people, over 30-40% of them, were in an uprising wanting to overthrow the Ayatollah. And we gave absolutely no support. You don't have to put support on the ground. You can do financial support. You can make other countries go in there. But we didn't. And what happened is both times under Obama and Biden, that movement collapsed. Iran is suffering financially. There's more sanctions going on there, so it's going to be harder for them to do business in the world. It's going to be harder for them to funnel funds to purchase Iranian oil like they've been doing in the past. And I think you're going to see more nations come to put stricter sanctions on them in alliance with us on that puts more pressure on that. We have nothing against the Iranian people. What we have is, like you said, that regime that's been in there since the 70s saying death to America. That's not going to move any of us closer to a peaceful world. And so Trump is the one that's doing this, and I applaud him and his team. And, you got Rubio in there, and these are good days. Let's just keep the pressure on there, but yet allow them to save face and join, the rest of the world. And let's get away from these conflicts.
Well, I don't want to rush this segment because, Donald Trump had such a good week, literally 2 weeks. Well, I guess 100+ days. But we're going to take a quick commercial break and we'll be back in just a moment. But please support our sponsors. If you'd like to become a sponsor, look at that Contact Freddie little logo you'll see periodically on your screen.
Freddie's the man.
And we'll love to have you. So we're going to take a quick commercial break and we'll be right back.
Although the owner of Lewis Oil Company maintains she is 29, Lewis Oil turns 60 years old in June. Chevron would like to recognize the North Florida second-generation family-owned business, celebrating its growth and staying power. Lewis Oil Company maintains significant on-hand supplies, strategically located fuel depots, a delivery fleet, on-site service, fuel card locks, and convenience stores. Lewis Oil Company understands its responsibility in the local economy by providing service and delivery on demand and in crisis. As a first responder for 18 Florida counties and the Southeast from Texas to Virginia, we are proud of this rare accomplishment. Lewis Oil delivers.
This is Ward Scott, and I want to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. The Ward Scott Files premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care.
Meldon Law, the only official injury partner of the Florida Gators.
The Ward Scott Files Gold sponsors are Lewis Oil Company,
Shoot GTR,
On the Spot Dry Cleaners, R&R Construction, and Style Cuts. If you are interested in promoting your business on the show, you can visit our website, www.wardscottfiles.com, and click on the Advertise Here banner on the right side of the page, or call my friend Freddie at 352-284-3733. Again, thank you to all the great businesses that support the Ward Scott Files. And remember, if you like the show, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. May God have mercy on your soul.
Ward, that very much surprises me that you've never been tased.
You can't handle the truth!
All bees poop.
A warthog. He's gonna come up the steps. Here he comes. Oh my goodness, and he's huge. Hello, boy. Wonder if we can pet him. Hi, boy.
Can we touch him? No, don't.
Help me! Help! Help!
And we're back here on our pirate podcast here with yours truly, the old salty dog, John Martin, and my traveling friend, the captain of our pirate ship, Ted Yoho. If you're just tuning in, Ted is on walkabout in Slovakia. He is
checking out new spots to broadcast from.
Absolutely. So, and I'm hunkered down here in Fort Hawthorne. Well, he may be in Slovakia, but one thing we were talking about, there's nothing slow about what Donald Trump is doing. We're talking about his great trip. He's on his way back now from the Middle East. And, when we went to break, we were talking about the Iran being isolated. But, something I really hadn't heard people talk about, Ted, but I believe he's also boxing Putin in to a certain extent. And I realize
I think he is.
He's holding out, but think about this, Ted. If we make peace with Syria, if we take Iran off the nuclear front and all of that kind of stuff, if all this happens, where is Putin going to go? Because his influence in the Middle East has basically been Syria and Iran. Other than that, he really doesn't have much. So if
he's got Kim Jong-un.
Where does he go?
Kim Jong-un out of North Korea, which is the most isolated nation on the planet. Then you have Xi Jinping, who uses Putin as a puppet. You have what's left of the Cuban regime, and then you have Venezuela and what Iran can do. But you look at the politics of those countries; those are politics people don't want. I'm here in Slovakia, and they were talking about when it was under the Iron Curtain, they were part behind the Iron Curtain, and how there was suppression for over 40 years, and how they were so happy to get out of that. That's what comes with the divide that we're seeing in the world today. And this is just another step out of it with what's going on with the Middle East by the leadership of Donald Trump. And these are things that need to continue. And you're talking about the Democrats are really upset about this. It's because they don't know what leadership is. They wanted to lead to the demise of America so that they could rebuild it in their utopian eyes of socialism. And as we talked about before, socialism leads to communism. Once the communists achieve socialism, they're never happy. It's more power, more control, more money. And this is a perfect place to see it over here. Those two that dichotomy in those two forms of government.
Well, you've heard me say this many times, Ted, but if I say it, it certainly bears repeating that the one thing the Democrats, they're not afraid of Donald Trump being a dictator and all. That's not really what they're afraid of. They're afraid that it's going to work. That the modern agenda, the America First, is actually going to work. And we're seeing that from this trip. But, here's the thing. Two words that I have not heard the Democrats say this week, and that is anything about the stock market. The stock market has soared back to where it was before all of this shakeup with the tariffs and all happened. And, people aren't worried about that as much right now. And, the other little word, and I'll do my best, Joe Biden, they don't talk about inflation. You never hear the word inflation because inflation.
You did that pretty good. You scared me, John. You're scaring me.
They're the lowest in 4 years. Did you hear that, Ted? They're the lowest in 4 years. They don't talk about the stock market and they don't mention inflation at all, other than to say, I think it was on CNN, that Donald Trump's lies about egg prices has actually become true now. It's just incredible.
Well, their whole thing is they've lost their agenda. They've lost the political leaders people want to file. We know what the poll numbers are. They're less than 20%, 27% favorable. That can change. That can change overnight with the right message that gets out there. People, a viral moment will change that. But what we have to get our listeners to focus on is look at where the Democrats are leading us. You had open borders, you had runaway inflation, you had high inflation, you had high gas prices because of the war on fossil fuels. And then look at how they've responded to Elon Musk. They're attacking Tesla, an inanimate object, because it represents Elon Musk. You look at the things they did with COVID, the lockdowns, closing schools, closing businesses. You and I know people that went out of business with their policies. There's a montage out there of the Rachel Maddows and the Don Lemons or whatever that guy's name that was fired from CNN about if you don't get a COVID vaccine, you deserve to die. The hatred that they have, it just goes on. And that's who you get when you put Democrats in charge. They're not Democrats, they're Marxists. And so we have to keep this engine going. We have to keep it going. We need to get more people on this because we're in a fight. They want to change the country. We're trying to maintain a constitutional republic and make it better. They want to destroy that and take everything away. And the likes of AOC and Bernie Sanders, it's the whole attack on the oligarchs. Give me a break. We're talking opportunity is there for anybody that wants it. They're saying that the reason you can't get ahead is because these nasty, wealthy, rich white people suppressed you. Total lie. Sorry, I went off on a rant.
And don't forget, they want forever wars. And that's something Donald Trump is absolutely about peace and prosperity. And they want forever wars. Don't ever forget that, because the party that used to be supposedly the anti-war party is all about the United States being the policeman of the world. That's what they're about. Yeah. So Donald Trump's week, we're talking about the week. Well, it actually began this way. I want to play a short snippet. The last American hostage held by Hamas was freed, and I want you to see the reaction of him seeing his mother for the first time in basically almost 2 years. Check it out.
So much can change in a year and a half. But Adon Alexander's family were right here waiting. Now 21, now finally free, he fell into their arms today. And 584 days into this nightmare, 10 of
And that's how the president's trip basically started right there, Ted. I mean,
I tell you, that was amazing.
Under Trump, I mean, I can
to see that young Jewish man to be able to get back to his mother. I mean, that's something I think any parent can understand that. I mean, or any relative.
Yeah, can you imagine how they feel about that? Really, the whole community up there in New Jersey just went off the chart too with it. The whole town kind of turned out. But Donald Trump is not only a peacemaker, but he's bringing people back to the United States. We leave no one behind.
Think of the message that sends to other dictators and repressive governments like the Putins, like the Iran, the Ayatollahs, like the Cubans, like the Venezuelans. Think of the message that sends like, the world is changing and it's not going in their favor. And that's why we have to keep the pressure on. We have to make sure people sign up to vote the correct way, which would be the Republican agenda. And we need to hold our elected officials accountable. If they go off the rail, we need to bring them back or replace them. Don't ever be afraid to replace a representative, congressman and or senator.
Yeah, well, I can think of one or two probably on both sides that need to be replaced, and maybe
I know a whole bunch on the other side.
Yeah, but I don't want to say who I think needs to be back up there because it might piss off a lady named Carolyn. But people don't know what I'm talking about. But I tell you what, and I don't know if
we couldn't go on these extended cruises.
Yeah, you need the extended cruise, man. On top of all of this. And you and I, as both grandparents, appreciate this. President Trump became a grandpa yesterday for the 11th time as Tiffany Trump had a baby boy. And from what reports I've seen, the mother and baby are doing fine. So congratulations, President
Absolutely.
Trump.
Congratulations to propagate like the good Lord told us to do. Be fruitful and multiply. And I need to tell my kids to tighten up.
I hear you. So I've got, I guess the president's probably the same. I got 7 myself, so it's hard to keep up with sometimes. But so the president had an incredible week. But this is what he's got to come home to, Ted. This next story it's just unbelievable. And this broke kind of late yesterday. Comey.
This is going to have a lot of continuation on this one.
Yeah, But James Comey, in case people hadn't seen it, we're going to show a picture. He posted this on his X account or Twitter. He said something about the Seychelles. It says 8647. On Thursday, Comey posted a picture on Instagram of shells in the formation of 8647 with the caption, "Cool shell formation on my beach walk." He later took the post down and said he didn't know that 86 was associated with violence. And who doesn't know that? I mean, if you've watched one episode of the Sopranos or Godfather, you know what 86 means.
Heck, it might have been on Andy of Mayberry. It might have been on Andy of Mayberry. Give me a break. This guy was the head of the FBI. This guy was the guy that came out and exonerated Hillary Clinton. You know, he told everything that she did that she should have been in jail for, but says, we're not going to press charges. He doesn't have the right to say that. That's up to the district attorney or the attorney of the United States. And this is the deep state at its worst. This is the guy that led the Steele dossier. This is the guy that led the Trump collusion. This is the guy that wiretapped Donald Trump under Barack Obama before he was even a president, a private citizen. They're tapping him. This guy needs to be held accountable because he is the head of the snake of the deep state. Him along with James Clapper and the other guy. Clapper and Brennan, James Brennan.
What a rogues gallery that is.
And for somebody to say, "Oh, I didn't know what that means," give me a break.
It kind of reminds me of all you're hearing from the media now about, that they didn't know that President Biden was failing, but now they're writing books about it and everything else. I mean, the way I look at it, Ted, and this fits Comey to a T, he's either lying or he's incompetent. Lying. And he's probably both. I mean, it's just hard. You cannot believe, and you made that point, the head of the FBI doesn't know what 86 means. I mean, give me a break.
Give me a break. And this guy needs to be held accountable for this. Some kind of charges or investigation need to start, because that's basically a call to assassinate this president. And he goes, I didn't know what it meant. If something happens to Donald Trump, we need to go after him. Think about when Sarah Palin, when she was running with, John McCain, when there was that thing with a bullseye on it.
Yeah.
And how the media and the left said she put a target on somebody's back. They did this to Paul Gosar out of Arizona. I think it was against AOC. And they went apoplectic about this. Oh, he's got to be censored. He's got to be thrown out of Congress. Here they do 8647, and James Comey just happens to stumble across this, like Zeus came out of the oceans and did the shells like that. I want to see the satellite imagery that was going over to see if you see the 6'7" James Comey bent down putting those down there. And this is
Ted, he even said that he thought it was a political message, but didn't understand what it actually meant. I mean, Lord,
what he did is he just put a mark on President Trump with a price on it. And we've watched enough of those spy movies with the CIA where the secret message comes out and it goes to the operative. You know, that stuff is real. There's a great book I'm reading right now, The Deep State by Kevin Shipp, how it gets exposed and the garbage that the CIA and the FBI did. And it grew beyond what they intended. President Truman says this thing has gotten out of control, started under him, the CIA. Eisenhower said the same thing. And now you look at where they are. They got $100 billion budget, the CIA.
That we know of.
That we know of. And that's not them printing money illegally or the drug sales that are coming in. It's a rogue agency is what it is. And it's for real, folks. And I'm telling you, with the reading I've done, the people I've talked to, this is something that we need to pay attention, because this goes right after our fundamental principles, life, liberty, and the pursuit of America in America.
Well, I want to play this, and I know you've seen this video before, Ted. This is Comey when he's talking about that he went after Flynn, General Flynn, in the early days of the Trump administration. And I want people to hear him in his own words, and I want them to hear the laughter and the joy in what he's saying. Check this out.
How did that happen?
I sent them. Something I probably wouldn't have done or maybe gotten away with in a more organized investigation, a more organized administration, in the George W. Bush administration, for example, or the Obama administration. The protocol, two men that all of us have perhaps increased appreciation for over the last 2 years. And in both of those administrations, there was process. And so if the FBI wanted to send agents into the White House itself to interview a senior official, you would work through the White House counsel, and there'd be discussions and approvals and who would be there. And I thought, it's early enough, let's just send a couple guys over. And so we placed a call to Flynn, said, hey, we're sending a couple guys over. Hope you'll talk to them. He said, sure.
I mean, there you have Comey in his own words, admitting that he knew what he was doing was outside the lines and potentially illegal and everything else, but he laughed about it and said we could take the chance. Here's a guy who flaunts the law, and he was in charge of the largest law enforcement organization we have, and yet, I mean, what else do you need to know about this guy?
Again, this is something that is just so in your face. And there's a great documentary. I met General Flynn, and he was a Democrat, and he talks about this. There's a great documentary where he and his son, I forget the name of it, but it's, if you Google Flynn documentary, where they put the money together to do this documentary. And like I said, I've met with him. I remember the day that Comey did this to him, and he talks about this, how he was set up. He should have had counsel there, but he thought he was just being a nice guy. And he was going to talk to Comey. But as Comey said, I sent him there. But what he doesn't tell you, I sent him there and we set him up. And it crushed General Flynn's career. And this guy was one of those people you want on your side working for America. And James Comey, he's just a piece of trash that needs to be taken out. And he needs to go to Alcatraz. I hope he's the first one Trump puts in there.
Well, I was going to ask you, what do you think should happen? But you answered the question before I could ask it. So, all right, we're going to move along to another story. And you wanted to talk about this, Ted, and I think it's a great story, although somewhat concerning. This comes from Politico, and it's about the big, beautiful bill, so to speak. The headline here says, first time we're hearing of them, the GOP mega bill is packed with surprises for some Republicans. And I want to read this one more snippet and we'll talk about it. The House Energy and Commerce Committee was 16 hours into nearly a 27-hour markup when it became clear that Republicans on the panel, this is Politico's words, weren't clear on what key Medicaid provisions in the legislation they were actively debating on and what to actually do about it. So my first thought about it, Ted, because you can help explain this, you've been there. For the average person out here, it's hard for us to fathom why they have to meet for 27 hours, in this case, 16 hours straight and all that kind of stuff. Why does it take so long and so cumbersome to get what we think is the basic work of Congress done?
Probably the biggest thing is you got, the Republicans and the Democrats, and, the Republicans will get 5 minutes to talk about something, and then the Democrats will say, oh, you're taking money away from poor people, you're taking money away from people that they need our help, and you're against these people that can't work, and so that goes on back and forth, and so you really don't get anywhere. You don't move the needle forward. They need to get rid of all that BS, and you have to. And this starts with having representatives in there that are there to serve the country, not a political agenda. Because if I'm the Republican and I want to reform Medicare, or Medicaid, and I talk about putting work requirements in there for able-bodied adults. Able-bodied adults are people that can work but choose not to between the age of 18 and 62 or 63. So the Democrats are saying, you shouldn't have to work. We're a wealthy nation. We can pay you to stay at home. And these are the people that are out of the job market. They don't show up on unemployment because they're out of the job market. They're not even looking. And there's millions of them. I forget the number of that. Thank you. And so that's why these fights go back and forth, because it becomes political instead of focusing on what we're trying to accomplish. And if they would focus on what we're trying to accomplish, we're $37 trillion in debt. We can't keep spending the way we are. This is not a break for the billionaires or the oligarchs, as what's his name wants to say. This is something we're trying to resolve, and they don't have a common goal, because if the Democrats give in, or if the Democrats work together with the Republicans, they're going to be under the gun like John Fetterman, like Chuck Schumer, like Dick Durbin. If you go along and don't fight the other side, if you're not there fighting, then you've capitulated and you're helping the other side win. So therefore you're losing. And the Democrats can't tolerate that. That's why this is going on. Now, procedurally, why it goes on for 27 hours, I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I think you should say, we're coming into the weekend. Let's go out to a nice dinner, get a good night's sleep. Let's come back tomorrow when everybody's refreshed. That would make more sense, because, you saw the guy that fell asleep and they had to wake him up to vote. He doesn't know what he's voting on because he fell asleep.
Yeah, there were several that did, actually, and they kept showing them on. It reminds me of something I used to say all the time, because there are a lot of good people in Congress, but if I could do one thing and just flush them all out in one shot, make one vote to get rid of everybody and start over, I would be willing to do that, because I know that's not, and some of our friends would go, but we need a.
How about if we paid them on results?
Yeah, you get paid for the results.
paid them for performance, and we grade them.
But Pennsylvania GOP representative, writing back to the story on Politico, McKenzie said there were some items in there talking about the big, beautiful bill that was the first time we're hearing of them. And if that's true, and I'm not saying it's not, my concern is why? Why is this the first time? It kind of ties into the long meetings. Why are they hearing this for the first time? Because this is about Medicaid, I do believe, right?
Well, that's their big hang up. That's the big thing they're issuing, and they're arguing it. Sometimes what happens in these, this is what we call a markup. This is where the bill comes out. Every member gets a copy of that, but I don't know how many pages this one is, but we've had them 2,600 pages that come out today. We're supposed to vote on it tomorrow. And there's a 72-hour rule. And under McCarthy, it came out at 11:59 tonight. So that's when it strikes 12 o'clock, that's one day. So then you have the next day. So say it came out on Monday or Sunday, 11:59. Tuesday, we're voting on it, because that's 72 hours in their mind. That's well, he's gone. I don't need to talk about him. And that was one of the reasons.
That's done intentionally, it sounds like. That's what I think a lot of people look at.
These big bills come out, and so they're going back and forth, and they're trying to bring it to where people can vote on it, to make it bipartisan. So sections of that will go back to the drafting board, and then it comes back out, and they have to go back through that. So that's what extends it. But again, when you work 27 hours straight reading that kind of text, you can't pay attention. And so I think they should take a break. What's wrong with taking a break? Put it off for a day or two. Go out and play a round of golf or something. Get your head right and get this bill right, because this is not for a political party. This is for the United States. We have to bring our debt down. You and I have talked about this. We're at $3.2 billion a day in interest payments. Interest payments alone. That's going to crush this nation. And this is where the Democrats should tighten up and say, you know what? We have a mess on our hands. We're part of it because we're here, but let's fix it for the next generations. And this is what they don't do. This is the thing I get so irritated with AOC and Bernie. They talk about what the Republicans are taking away from you. Well, by God, if we don't straighten this out, it's all going to be taken away from everybody, and this country will flounder, it'll fail, and then China will be dictating the new world order.
Well, I think I can speak for a lot of just average Americans. When we see all of this, we tend to think that they're trying to pull a fast one over us. I mean, that's just, but talking about here's one of your buddies, Ted.
The Democrats would never do that.
Yeah, I'm sure that you were close buddies with this guy, Jerry Nadler. Jerry Nadler said, talking about the Republicans, he said they rushed this cruel bill to mark up in the dead of night without even understanding what they were voting on. I love this phrase right here. This is Jerry Nadler.
Yeah, this is
American
classic.
people deserve, here's what he said. The American people deserve leaders who will fight for them, not destroy their lives to hand billionaires another round of tax cuts. Jerry Nadler? I mean, my God, man. And the Democrats in general. I want to play this quick video. This goes back about 11 years ago when Obama.
I know this one well.
Passed. I mean, it's classic. This is Nancy Pelosi in her own words. Let's play this and we'll come back and talk about it.
We're very, you've heard about the controversies within the bill, the process about the bill, one or the other items. But I don't know if you have heard that it is a legislation for the future. Not just about health care for America, but about a healthier America, where preventive care is not something that you have to pay a deductible for or out of pocket. That prevention is about diet, not diabetes. It's going to be very, very exciting. But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it away from the fog of the controversy.
Well, there you have it.
Welcome
you have
to
to
Uncommon
pass
Knowledge.
it
I'm Peter
in order to
Robinson.
know what's in it. And it's ridiculous that they operate that way. But for Jerry Nadler and the Democrats to talk about something happening in the dead of night, I mean, that's what they do all.
You talk about
they kind of set the
hypocrisy.
standard for that.
Hypocrisy. And for him to, like you said, for him to say that, and Jerry Nadler, and I hate to bash anybody, but his nickname up there was the Penguin, because he kind of just waddles around, and he sat down next to me, just belching. I tried to say hi to him. He just reading the paper, then so excuse me. And it was one of those things that's like, how did this guy stay in office? And if you go back, they were going to run him out of office or out of that committee chairman. But Pelosi protected him. And, we have to pass it to see what's in it. I hate to say this, but, we're here to educate people. Kevin McCarthy said the same thing when we had a budget bill come out. It was 2,600 pages, and he gave it to us 11:59 one night. We're supposed to vote on it a day and a half later. And we're saying, we can't read this thing. And so both sides are guilty of this, but Nancy Pelosi is infamous because she did this.
Well, from what little bit I've heard from some of my sources up there, Jerry Nadler's new nickname might ought to be Depends. But because I heard he's not pleasant to be around. Let's put it that way. But
he's just not a pleasant guy. I have to say that.
So we'll have to see if the big beautiful bill is in trouble or not. But anyway, we got about 5 minutes left in the show, and I want to cover this because a little bit. There's a big case before the Supreme Court, and it's talking about the birthright citizenship.
This is an important case.
A bigger issue, if there is such thing, a different issue involved in that, and that is the ability of these judges around different circuits. Well, I think there's like 600 or some different circuits or whatever to basically stop the president or the executive branch in their tracks. What are your thoughts on all of this?
Well, I think this goes back to a kind of a Congress 101. There's three branches of government: the executive, judicial, and the legislative. The judicial, by design, was designed to be the weakest branch of government. It was designed to give opinions on laws and arguments, not to legislate from the bench. This is a question that has been going on for decades. The citizen birthright citizenship. The reason the 14th Amendment was there was to make sure that the people that were enslaved, they weren't all African Americans or Irish were enslaved. There were a lot of different ethnicities. African Americans were by far the largest group enslaved. It was to allow them, after the Civil War and the 13th Amendment, that they anybody that was born in this country would be determined to be a citizen. Things change. And people have taken advantage of this. Do you realize there's people coming from every country around the world, and they have excursions? They come in right at 8.5, 9 months pregnant, have a baby here so that baby can be a U.S. citizenship. People want this. We need to protect what we have, citizens' right. You go back to the guy in El Salvador, Garcia. They're saying, well, he's married here to an American woman, so he should be a citizen. People take advantages over and over again. And I think we need to protect it as a sovereign nation. This is something, as it goes to the court, the birthright citizenship bill, it may get turned down by the courts, but this is going to bring up legislation, is my prediction. The other thing is for a federal judge to be able to stop something that is political. It shouldn't happen. A nationwide injunction by a federal judge, I think, shouldn't happen. And this is something, again, it's going to be very pivotal at the Supreme Court. And it'll be interesting if the Supreme Court goes along with Trump on the birthright citizenship. Think of the impact that's going to have on this country. What that's going to do is force people that want to be an American citizen, number one, to come in legally. Number two, take the exam and become an American citizen and assimilate in the principles of one country under God, the constitutional principles, and a flag to stand up and respect. We'll respect your given culture, but you need to respect why you came to America and what it stands for.
Well, you mentioned about potential legislation, and I want to bring up to people that they ought to read the 14th Amendment, because the real question is in Section 1. And I'm going to read this brief snippet here of Section 1. It says, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. The key thing is subject to jurisdiction thereof, because that brings up who has the jurisdiction, the president, the Supreme Court, the Congress, what branch of government. It could be multiple. So that actually throws it into potentially legislation to say who is a naturalized United States citizen.
When I was in Congress, we tried to get this legislation across. Steve King, who's no longer in Congress, he's from Iowa. Great constitutional, just a working man. I mean, they had a construction company, and he and I were great friends. He had this bill come in pretty much every Congress, and we voted for it. We wanted to promote this, and we couldn't ever get tractions on it because this is one of those controversial bills. If you vote for it, you're xenophobic, you're against immigration. No, we want to clarify the law, and it's time we do that. Other nations do this. We're the only nation on the planet that if you bring a child in here and you're not even a citizen and that child's born here, it's automatic a citizen of this country. No other nation does that.
Yeah, it's potential political suicide.
And this was done for the people that were enslaved. And like I said, there were several different cultures that were enslaved.